Hi, everyone. I'm Amy,
And I'm Audrea.
and this is The Right Crowd. So grab a cup of coffee
Or a cup of tea.
or maybe a little something on the rocks, and let's get started. Okay, so we told you last week that we were super excited about this week's video because it's our favorite chapters. So take it away, Audrea.
We finally get to talk about plot and scenes, and these chapters were so amazing.
Yes.
I hope you guys have got John Truby's The Anatomy of Story, and I hope you stuck with it long enough to get to these two chapters because they are amazing.
This is the chapter on plot, guys. That's the chapter on plot.
Yeah. So let's see, starting with plot. First thing, it gave me pause because Truby warns the author who's reading this, the reader, that reliance on 3-act structure can lead to second act problems, that it's problematic from the start. And I was like, oh, snap, wait a minute. But we're all supposed to be using 3-act or 4-act structure. How dare thou?
Yeah.
So that was out of the gate. He comes guns up.
And when I read that, I was like, oh, that's all we've been talking about. It's a 3-act structure. But we also said that we would be reading books that would contradict each other, and that's okay.
Yes.
So
the way, and so I highlighted that. Oh my goodness. So that did give me pause. But then when he broke it down, and he talks of this is now where you get to see the 22 steps to writing a good story. He breaks those down and gives an example in this book. But I'm jumping ahead.
I was like, we're not there yet.
Nope. So he comes, this concept he calls organic plotting.
Right.
Which I loved the way he broke that out. He says an organic plot shows the actions that lead to the hero's character change or explain why that change is impossible. And the ones I highlighted were, because we don't, read the whole book to you guys. You guys are supposed to get the book.
You're supposed to get the book, go buy the book.
Yeah. But the one that I really liked was, he says, if you're doing organic plotting, then it doesn't feel artificial. And even if you're doing a genre book, it doesn't feel like you're just doing tropes and things like that. He says, the amount of plotting seems to come naturally from the main character rather than being imposed by the author on the characters. And so for those of you who are pantsers who've often said, I decide on something that's going to happen and my characters just tell me that that's wrong and they do their own thing. That's kind of what can happen with organic plotting, is that the character, the needs for the development of the character will start to drive your plot, and your plot will seem more organic to the reader or the watcher of the film. So it won't feel artificial or fake or like really trying too hard on that scene.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to try some of the things that he outlined in organic plotting.
One of the one thing I want to point out before we go into all the different plot types and all the things is he quotes Edgar Allan Poe. And Edgar Allan Poe said that in a good plot, no part can be displaced without ruin to the whole.
Yes.
So if your plot is done well, it should all go well. If you have a piece that's not done right, it's going to make the whole thing, I don't say garbage, but you want to get it right.
You want to write it tight.
Yeah.
Which
and follow the points and the steps and all the things. This is and literally I just had this thought. This book is like people who want to eat something and they just want a taste of it, and based on that one taste, they want to we'll just say they just want to make the whole pie. They have one taste, they want to make the whole pie.
Oh,
But
okay.
say it's a pie that has different, like maybe this part of the pie tastes one way, but this part of the pie tastes a different way because it's got, maybe it's a, let's just say it's an apple. I would never make this because
What kind of pies are you eating?
we're gonna make one up. We're gonna say it's an
Okay.
apple blueberry. Okay. And you take a bite of the apple part of it and you don't know it's a blueberry. So you think you can make the pie
Oh,
without having a taste of all the pieces.
Ah.
I kind of feel like this book is like that. Like, I feel like someone's going to read this and be like, oh yes, my story needs that one thing. They're going to miss out on how glorious the whole thing could be
oh,
by
yeah.
not putting all the pieces, all the ingredients into
Yeah.
their pie.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I just want to tell people, because we've said it's dense and it's a lot to get through. And we actually discussed amongst the two of us that this, no matter how good it is, because it is so dense, it would have been one of those books where, you know what, when I have more time, I'll read it, and we would have put it aside
Mhm.
had it not been for having to do this. And yet we are very happy that we went through it because it was so good.
Yes.
So don't feel like when you get started, like, oh my gosh, this is too much, I'll do it later. No, 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 no. Do it now. Because I think you'll have a lot less to have to correct in your writing.
Mhm.
And your stories will come out better baked.
Better baked pies and stories, right? Get them
You'll
right.
have a better baked
Right
pie
crowd.
if you put all of the pieces into your pie, not just. So anyway,
Great.
I just literally, as we were talking, I was like, you know what? Someone's going to be like, yes, I need to make sure that my plot shows the action that leads to the hero's character change. Cool, got it. All right, I'm done with the book. Yeah, no,
No.
there's
Yeah.
so many things, and you need to read all of it to get all of it. And yes, there may be pieces that you're like, that doesn't work for me. I really like my 3-act structure. Fine, make everything else fit in that, because like his 22 steps, when you read it and you see what he's talking about and
Yeah.
the 7 steps, like you can fit that into a 3-act structure. Just anyway, now I feel like I'm just rambling. All right, I will stop. Go ahead. I'm gonna sit back. I'm done. My words are done for this video. It's all you now, Audrea.
Oh, no, they're not. And one of the things he says, if you're new to writing and you're not as familiar with plotting, but I kind of felt like when I was reading this book, especially when I got to some of the later chapters, like, okay, maybe I am new to writing. I am starting fresh because I did not know some of these things or had not worked in some of these things. So I like how he puts it. The plot is the intricate weaving of characters and actions over the course of an entire story. And he breaks down the types of plots after he tells you that to ignore the 3-act structure. And yeah, go on to this fabled organic plot, which I love the organic plot and the idea that plot could come naturally and not have to be forced or artificial. And it comes down to the types of plot. And he has the journey plot, which did I highlight that? No, I didn't highlight that one, which is, to me, reminded me a lot of the what is it called? The character's journey. Is that, no, that's not. Is that what it is? I can't remember. Anyway, the journey plot, where a character goes through a linear journey and meets people and has encounters along the way, and that growth takes place along that line. And then my favorite, because it's close and near and dear to my heart, is the reveals plot, because things are revealed throughout the story, and I love when things are revealed. He also has something called the 3 unities plot and some other types of plots that your book could, or a screenplay could, fall into. Was there a favorite that jumped? Oh, and the genre plot. Although the genre plot, and he does say you can use some of these things together too, but the genre plot was one that I spent a little bit more time on because, of course, I write genre fiction. But what were the ones that jumped out at you?
I don't know if there was any particular one that I wrote more notes on. I don't know that I would do a multi-strand plot. That seems like a lot to keep up with. And that would be like the Law and Order, right? So there's multiple things going on and you have to like weave them all together. That's a lot of remembering.
Well, he used Law and Order as an example, and that is a lot of strands to tie together, but a lot of—
I will watch that all day long. I don't know that I want to write it.
Yeah. Yeah, I even have trouble. I focus so much on one character. So the books where when I write, I like to read when it jumps back and forth, although sometimes I just want to like, just get them together and let's just go forward.
And you know, I can tell you the ones that don't do it well, because when it's not done well, they'll get to another strand and be like, okay, wait, just fast forward through that one.
Yeah.
I don't care about that one. Right. So, and the thing I like about this, and maybe I just feel like he did it with each of them. He told you what it was, how to do it, and then the problem with it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he's like, yeah, this may sound great. And here's the problem with doing it, using this. So he's like, he's not telling you this is the problem, so you don't do it. He's telling you this is the problem, so you can avoid making the problem. Are your notebooks falling off the shelf?
Sorry. I guess you guys were watching me tumble thing. It's a little chilly here in South Dakota today, so I was going to warm up a little bit and to move things around.
So yeah, I don't know if there was one that I liked over the others. I do know that I enjoy watching multi-strand, but I don't know that I'd want to write it. And then he gives you, thank you, Pearl. And then he gives you the steps in creating an organic plot, actually the sequences. And I'm actually going to take my books that I'm in the process of, and this is the other thing, the great thing about not being published yet is there's nothing out there that anybody's going, oh my God, that's written so horribly. Like nobody's going to know. They're not going to know because I'm going to fix it before I publish it.
Yeah. He's making my revision process a little bit longer, but still I'm going to have a better product, I think, when it.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, he gives you the steps in creating an organic plot. Love that. And then he goes through the entire 22 step story structure. And there's parts of it, if you recall from Save the Cat, there are some similarities, which is why I think a lot of people compare these two books, Save the Cat, which we did a series on before, and Truby's Anatomy of Story. There are some similarities, but lots more differences in how he breaks it out. And so then I took his 22 plot structure and the exercise for the 22 plot structure. And then I took my book and put it into the 22 plot structure. And I'm wondering, and so I'm hoping that some things started to come out when I put it into this structure, as opposed to the Save the Cat 15 beats. So I'm going to see which one is going to work for me. And like we always say, all of these books, there's so many authors and there's so many different styles of writing, so many craft books out there. You have to find what works for you or pick things from each that will work for you and make your own thing. So right. I'm excited because I did start plotting out my novel based on this 22 act structure. And it feels more organic.
Before we start diving into those, I want to point out one thing that he says about this 22 steps. He says that they never tell you what to write. They show you the most dramatic way to tell your story to your audience.
Yeah, the most dramatic way, which is key. Yeah.
To tell what you're writing, right? He doesn't tell you what to write. It's just 22 steps of how to make it the most dramatic for your audience. So, and then this is where he points out that you need at least the 7. that we discussed in last week's video, you need the 7, no
Yep.
matter how the length. What you do with it after that is up to you.
Yes.
More, less, whatever works for the story you're writing. But make sure you get the 7 in there.
And for those of you who are pantsers, you don't have to feel like you have to do all of these things, but it's a good idea to know all of these things, to know if your book is doing these things. So there's a difference between plotting these things out and outlining and doing all of these things and then writing your book, which is what he suggests, obviously, or having a book that just came forth from you, like from NaNoWriMo, or just like organically sprang from you, or like the muse used your body to write the book. And then looking at your book critically to see if these steps or these dramatic points are covered in your book. And he even, we glossed over the anti-plot, which is closer to what you get in more literary fiction, but he's not just commercial fiction, it's screenplays and genre fiction that he covers. There's a lot of that's applicable to literary fiction here too, I think.
Yeah. And I also like that he points out, and it was funny because I was like, wait, what? Is that he says, this is the order. And then he says, it's not the order. Like, it's like he says both. And I'm like, wait, what? Okay, wait, let me slow down. Let me reread to make sure I understood what he said. And what he was saying is, this is the order that makes the most sense. However, if you need to put them out of order, that's okay. Just don't put them too much out of order, because that's where you get the problem. So 1 through 10, you keep in order, and then you decide to do 13 before you do 11 and 12. That's cool, right? But don't do 1 through 10 and then skip down to 20. You've missed a lot of stuff in there, right?
Yes.
So he's like, it's not set in stone, but yet, I mean, it's almost cement. You can still call your name in it, but it's almost solid, right?
Right.
So just make sure that you don't go, I'm my own person and I'm going to do it my way. Well, you can. And he's showing you can do it your way. And if you want it to be as complete and whole and connect to your audience as much as possible, try to stick close to what this is.
Yeah. Yeah.
In his opinion.
I like how he took that, the 22 steps, and he used a table. Oh.
How do we always pick the books with tables? I feel like now we're going to have to like make sure every book we discuss has tables and diagrams, because there will be a diagram later. There are drawings in this book.
Don't hate on tables, Amy. And speaking of
No. I love it.
this is
I
the
know.
help I'm using that Amy gave me. Oh, this called for a spreadsheet. Yay! I love me some spreadsheets. But
No, I love the tables because I like being able to look across and see how things connect.
yes.
I can't make this table. Like if I need to make this table, I'm calling Audrea or my husband. I can't make it, but I love tables. So I wasn't knocking it. I was just saying every book so far we've picked has had tables and diagrams.
Your tables are awesome.
We should rename our channel Tables and Diagrams.
So he tells you what the steps are. He gives you the list. Then he gives you the diagram of how they relate to all of the other key points, or in anatomy of story, the character, the plot, story world, and moral argument. And then he goes into step by step of all 22 steps and deep
With
dive
examples.
with examples, which is what I love. And like self-revelation. I don't know why I'm showing the book, but see right here, it says self-revelation is the first one. And then he gives you, this isn't an example, but he tells you how to build this framing step. And he says, you should be able to ask yourself these questions. What will my hero learn at the end? And what is he wrong about at the beginning? Now, if you've read other authorcraft books, those questions are not that unique, but the way he structures them is a very,
Right.
it's a really cool structure overall to work together.
Yep.
And then his
Um,
example is from Casablanca.
He uses Casablanca. It's so weird. It's cool, not weird. I used the wrong word. He uses Harry Potter and Casablanca as a lot of his examples. And sometimes it's for the same thing. And I love that because they could not be any further from each other. And he's just showing you how it works in everything. So I like that. And he does that with every step. He gives you the step. Oops, he gives you the step. He tells you what it is, and then he gives you the example and how it works. Or two examples and how it works and what that one is. And like I said, I don't want to give you other things.
What's that? Oh yeah. I highlighted okay, so so truth be told, this book and Mr. Truby or Truby's minions, if you are listening, once again, I implore you to use bigger fonts and more white space, please, or put out a large text, large font book.
If they did that, this book would be like that.
I know.
Nobody would buy it.
I would buy that book because it would be easier to read for some of us. Well, also,
do I need to send you a magnifying glass?
No, I can read it. It's just easier to read, which is why, so truth be told, I have this book here, and I also have this book in Kindle, and I have.
So you can make it big.
It's bigger, and it's got the bookmarks, and it's lots more brighter and paper choice also, but and a lot of notes and highlights in there because there's more space. So that's how good this book is, or how useful this book is as a reference. That I have at least 2 versions, and I'd be willing to buy a third. Like if there were a workbook, I would probably buy a workbook.
Oh, this does need a workbook.
It does.
We kind of have a connection with him. We could tell him.
That's right. See, he said my book. There's Truby right there.
Yep. See, he timed it. Yeah. That's a really good idea. A workbook for this would be a game changer, I think.
Yeah.
It'd be so much easier to do the exercises and put all the things in. Are you sure there's not a workbook? Have you looked for a workbook?
I've looked over the years, many years, because I did take a class with him. And so I was looking for a workbook then. And so far there isn't one. I wonder why they have. Okay, we digress. Let's move on to the rest of the plot.
All right, here we go. Moving forward. The other thing is that there's a couple of steps where I'm like, how is that a step? But then there's like, okay, step 2 is, and no, we're not going through all of them, but this is for my point. Ghost and story world. I'm like, ghost, what in the world? But this is what he says. The hero's desire drives him forward. His ghost holds him back. And I'm like, wait. And I thought about my middle grade that I'm writing, my middle grade fantasy. And I'm like, it does. Like, I have that in my book. Like, what he's doing is like, they both are there. Like, his desire to do the thing is there, but in the back of his head, he doesn't want to do the thing because of the thing that happened in the past. So it's there. And I didn't know I did it.
I love how Ghost, you could think of, he also talks about weakness and need, but the ghost, I love that term for that thing that's holding the character back, because you can think of a ghost as like this ephemeral manifestation that's like holding that, like that's always there, whispering. So it's a cool what do you call those things that are simile or metaphor? It's a cool metaphor for this thing that you need for the character.
The antithesis? No, I'm joking. And then he goes through again and gives you examples. Casablanca again. I'm trying to think if there's anything without like literally telling you all the steps. Let me see if there's anything else. I'm saying a lot right now because I don't like, I have so many things highlighted, but I don't want it to like give away the book. So I'm, oh, wait, I don't want to say that one. So let me read the next, well, let me read the next highlight. Make sure, see, that's something I want to say.
Well, we're driving people to to buy the book. So I think some of it is fair. Oh, one of the things that comes up with when he talks about revelation. So I'm on page 289 talking about the plan. Number 10 is the plan.
Okay.
What I highlighted is the advantage of having, so his example is Casablanca. Again, Amy mentioned that he uses Casablanca, right? But I love the way he explains it. He says the advantage of having such a late plan is that the plot twists or reveals in the story near the end are rapid and breathtaking. So that's what can happen when, for example, that the character waits so long to take action and make a plan, and then all of a sudden things are just happening and like you're on the edge of your seat and are she gonna get on the plane or not, and what about the Nazis? So it's a really great way to and that's why I highlighted and wrote interesting as a technique to use perhaps in if not this book, another book, because sometimes in a book one of a series you have to build that whole story world, right? You have to set the setting and the quirky characters and things and the dynamics and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times in a cozy mystery, like I write mysteries and cozy mysteries, people want the body drop. Like that's when the inciting incident. Give me the body drop. But
when are you gonna kill somebody?
Yeah, but in a book, you have to set up the character and the town in a cozy mystery anyway. So I like how I could apply this technique, since the plan has to come a little bit later, especially in book one. And I was worried that if I change the pace, that it wouldn't match the front of the book. But I remembered after I read this, how many books I've read or movies I've watched where it seems like, yeah, and then what happened? And then what happened? Or if it's good, it's like it's really good, but then I'm still like, wait, we don't have much more time. And then all of a sudden things are happening. I'm like, oh my goodness, wait, I have to catch up now. And those are still really well done. And so that's a great technique that I could employ.
I think what I want to add to that is make sure that by the end, people don't walk away going, well, I guess they had to set it up for the next one.
Oh yeah.
Right, where you leave everybody hanging. You leave them hanging. I don't know that they're going to go to the second one. So you can have some bits in there that you take to the second one, but make sure you don't leave everything hanging. Like you've got to wrap something up. Yeah. And I've watched movies before where it was over and Randy and I have looked at each other and go, so I guess that was the setup.
And those are bad. I think Truby would say those are, I don't know what Truby would say, but those are not.
What would Truby say, Audrea?
Johnny and I. No, I don't know what you would say, but I think those are when you do things like that, there are ways to do it that are fair and organic, as to quote his book, that organic and feel natural and like, well, a lot happened in this book, and the author wrapped up all of these things, or this movie, all these things got wrapped up, but there's something niggling at the end, and man, I'd really love to see what happens with that. That's fair, and that's playing fair with your audience and getting them to the next book or the next movie fairly. And I think they do it more in today's movies. They do a lot of that. There's going to be an Avengers Part 3 of the one with the stones. I can't remember the name of it. Gosh, where's my brain? But anyway, the 2 parts, or Lord of the Rings. It was how many?
Yes, let's talk Lord of the Rings.
Three movies at least was the Lord of the Rings, and you knew that going into it, to the franchise. So but they did end each of those in a place where you were okay going to the next. Like, oh my gosh, so much has happened. The journey, and that's an example of one of those journey plots. So much has happened along the way, and the characters have grown along the way. And by the time you got to the end of this, what was the first movie, like 2.5, 3 hours almost, you're like, well, I need a bio break, and I need to get but it felt natural to go on to the next one. So there's a right way or a fair way and a not so fair, like artificial.
like there's a main plot line that runs through all of them.
Mhm.
And then they each have their own little plots that carry that particular story. So for the plots that are for that particular story, you need to make sure you end them.
Yes.
But that main plot line where they're carrying the ring, you can't do that in the first one. What's the point, right? It's got to carry all the way through. And we used an example of Bosch a couple of times where his main plot is to find the person who killed his mom.
Yes.
That's his main, but yet every one has a different thing that is closed by the end of that session, right?
Yeah. Which is nice.
The other thing I want to point out before we jump to where you are is that he also goes through that there are levels of desire and plot. And he gives you 11 of them from lowest to highest, different levels. Starts with survive and ends with save the world. So keep that in mind. There are levels to plot. And then right before we get, you said you were at 289?
Yeah, and I'm going backwards now. But
Oh,
yeah.
okay. On 287, I wrote down, and I'm hoping I can, so he kind of goes to his 3-act structure, no part, and he says that it doesn't work if you're competing in the real world for professional screenwriting, because this book is geared towards screenwriting, right?
Oh, yeah.
So my question that I wrote in the book was, I wonder what his opinion or just a book like.
Hey, start with your question was, because it blurped.
Oh, okay. My question was, what is the opinion for just a book? So if he's saying the 3-act structure, he says it'll give you a lousy plot with no chance of competing in the real world of professional screenwriting. Okay, maybe it doesn't work in a screenwriting. But I mean, I want to say clearly a 3-act structure works in books.
Oh yeah, it does.
However, when I write, I'm visualizing my book as a movie. So for me, I think I would be more inclined to follow what he's doing, because, oh my gosh, how cool would it be if you wrote something and someone goes, hey, can we make a movie out of that? Right? Yes. How cool would it be to not have to do a whole lot of more work with figuring out all the things to make it a good screenplay? So yeah. I just wonder, what do you think is his opinion on if it's just for fiction, not for a screenplay?
I don't know, but I mean, you're right. It obviously works because the 3-act structure has been touted for years by many successful authors with bestsellers and blockbuster books. So the 3-act structure works. It can work. I like how one of the things he says earlier in this plot section, how people who try to write strictly 3-act structure often will run out of steam in the 2nd act. And I don't know how many webinars or books or laments I've heard from authors when they say, they even have a term for it. It's the muddy middle. Where you're logging through the middle of your book because you're done. It is starting to feel artificial. You're putting things in to get to the end of Act 2, so you can be in Act 3 where all the stuff starts to happen again.
Right. And
so theoretically, using the 22 steps, you would not have a muddy middle because it's an organic plot where you're being driven forward by the character's development and not by the strict artifice of things, the beats that have to happen. But I don't know. There are greater minds than mine that will try to wrangle out the differences and the merits of each of these. But I do find some merit that applies to my own work. And I mean, I love the Save the Cat. And I did a lot of outlining and things based on Save the Cat. And I'm really liking more depth that I feel like I'm getting from John Truby. And I
Yeah.
do have designs on writing screenplays. Again, I used to write them back when I lived in Chicago. Well, I never sold any, let's be clear, but I took screenwriting classes, and I do want to write a movie that actually gets made one day. Or first step, getting options.
We should write one together.
And
she's so excited. She's dropping things.
All right.
She doesn't know what to say, so she drops something so that it would.
Well, I took a class. Okay, we're not talking about classes.
Okay.
We digress. Let's go back.
All right. We keep doing that. All right. But one thing I do want to point out in this one, there's a lot of information just in this one paragraph. And the thing he points out is that with a 3X structure, your story is going to have 2 or 3 reveals. Blockbuster Hollywood movies nowadays have 7 to 10.
Yes.
Which is why he's I think is where he goes back to the 3X structure doesn't work for screenwriting, because there's not enough reveals. There's not enough to keep the person going.
Yes, that's another one of, this book one, and Amy said it right when she said, don't just skip to the, chapters 8 and 9 where we are here. Is that right? Yeah, 8 and 9.
Yeah.
To get to the good stuff. There's so many things that he is building on. He has laid the groundwork, and now you're in plot, and he's talking back about story world. He's hearkening back to what he talked about, characters and their needs and revelations and things like that. But yeah, that my mind was blown with the whole more reveals. And I love that one of the exercises, or it might have just been a question that I made into an exercise, because he only has one exercise. He has one, and I do that a lot in any book. He has one exercise per chapter typically, but sometimes I read something he says or a phrase and I say, or like he says, ask yourself. And I'm like, well, that's an exercise. I'm going to ask myself that right now and put it on paper. I'm asking myself. And the answer is, so I make exercises. Because I'm so used to reading books. Well, back in my day, all these books didn't have exercises or blanks and things like that. So I used
back
to
in your day, what, when the dinosaurs? Like, I don't understand.
How dare you? And that's the end of this episode and the end of the writing crowd. You saw it here first. No. Moving on, Amy.
Yes, ma'am.
But I really did so I did make an exercise out of a list of reveals for the book and a list of reveals for the series, which I thought was a great way to look at it. What else? Oh, I flipped out of the plot section.
At the bottom of 289, the key point he has, the book has key points throughout the whole, whatever. It says the more intricate the opponent's plan and the better you hide it, the better your plot will be. And I thought that was really good.
And you guys see me highlighting while we're, this is like book club for us. This is book club for us.
This is book club for us, yeah.
I've highlighted a lot before we got here, but then as we're going on, I see something else or Amy says something that I think is great, but yeah. When he gets to, so that's a lot about the plan, the counterattack. He has a whole section on the opponent again, hearkening back to what he talked about, developing your opponent earlier in the book. But one of the things, and I didn't highlight this because it would have been just one big block of highlight, which I finally gave up on, and I did that in coming up, but is during the drive, which is another part, one of the steps, during the drive, you want plot development, not repetition. So he calls out Huckleberry Finn as one of the stories that is like a journey plot. And we talked about types of plots, a journey plot. And one of the failings of that great masterwork was that at the end, the ending is not, I know, who knew? The ending is not as organic because he had to insert something to get him back to the beginning. But if you use some of these steps, you won't have to do that. And he says, in other words, change the hero's action in a fundamental way. Don't keep hitting the same action point or plot beat. And I've seen, how many of us have seen movies or part 2s or 3s of movies where it's the same plot beats and you know what's going to happen, which can sometimes be a failing of genre fiction, which he mentions
Right.
when he goes over that type of plot.
Yep. And then he gives lots of examples. I think for this section, he is sticking with, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's doing for the 22 points, he's comparing Casablanca and Tootsie is what he's using for all of his points, and showing you how the different steps work for each thing.
We could have done a whole episode on plot. We should probably, but it's just so good. There are so many great parts to it to share with you guys. So I did, when it came to, the revelations, I highlighted, this is where I said I gave up trying not to highlight whole blocks of text.
Are you on 301?
I was on 297.
Okay.
That was,
there's a big section on 301 that I highlighted.
Okay, let's move. Okay, so that was audience revelation. Like we said, get the book so you know all 22 steps and places that we highlighted. And 301 is where we get to self-revelation. So what's what popped out for you on that page?
So what popped out for me is that he said a great self-revelation should be sudden. It should be shattering for the hero.
Yeah.
Whether it's positive or negative, doesn't matter. And new. So it must be something that the hero did not know about himself until that moment. And I was like, that's like, to me, I'm like, yes, that is what self-revelation is, right? Something you did not know about yourself until that moment. However, I hadn't thought about it being sudden and shattering. I hadn't thought about either one of those.
Yeah. And I like how, he puts that in the text, and then he's got some, like a couple of bullet points or list items there, which basically say that same thing. And don't have the hero state directly to the audience what he has learned. Yes, please don't. I hate it when they say they do that in movies, and it's like, well, gosh, I guess in order for me to be loved by someone else, I have to first love myself. I'm like, oh, please, come on. Really? Did you need to really? We're all following along, Junior.
And actually, he says that it's a mark of bad writing.
Yeah. Yepers. All right.
All right.
So,
anything else on these 22 that you want to talk about?
On the 22.
Because we still have another chapter discussing this.
I know this is going to be a long one. Sorry, take a break. Go get your refill on your tea, darlings, and come back. We're going to move on to the second chapter.
Oh my gosh, you did that so well. Oh, and this part is where he talks about be flexible. They're not in a fixed order, but then he says, and don't change them too much. Yeah. Because then you change the effect of how they all work together. And then he says the most powerful of all reveals is known as the reversal. And this is where the audience's understanding of everything is turned on its head.
Yes.
So I 99% of the time can figure stuff out. And not because I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens. I love it when it gets to the end and something happens and I'm like, and my husband will look at me, he'll be like, did you figure that one out? I'm like, no, I didn't. That's so cool. Because I think there's a lot of movies I haven't seen, and we discovered that when we were in Truby's class, when he was giving examples of things, and there were movies that you were like, how have you not seen that? But for all of the movies that I have seen and the TV shows that I've seen, like everybody follows the same pattern, right? So when they give a really good reversal at the end, where you're like, oh, that's his mother's brother, sister's father's wife? Oh my gosh, I never saw that coming. Like, that's fabulous. I love it. So he is accurate that it is the most powerful thing is when you give an audience a really good reversal.
Yeah. I love a good reversal. I love it. Like what's the movie that now I cannot think of? Oh, the one that he quotes in here, at least I think he quote The Usual Suspects. He mentions
Yeah,
that.
he does, which is one of
Okay.
the ones I haven't seen.
Oh my gosh, stop. But I love that movie so much. But yeah, the reversal in that one is like huge. Like, and then
Which now I know from reading the book.
unfortunately, yeah. But that movie is like 20 years old.
I know.
But the he talks about, we're gonna get to that in the next chapter for this he talks about how the reversal, no matter how big your audience starts playing back in there, like, how did I not get it? And then everything starts to take on new meaning. And I love that. It's like seeing the movie again for the first time. Or,
Yeah.
Once you get to that reveal, like, oh my gosh, roll the film back. But anyway, so yeah, that is a great part. So so there's so much in the 22 steps that he goes over with examples and thematic techniques and the sequence, like you said, you mentioned the sequence. We got to the storyteller section. I had a little bit of trouble with the storyteller section because I didn't get it. Because he said, he says in the top of the section, to use a storyteller or not, that is the question. And it's one of the most important decisions you must make in the writing process. And all I could think is like, what is your what's the other option? Until it took me rereading that. I had to reread that section because I'm like, I don't get it. There's a story, you're telling a story, everybody's, but so it took me, I struggled a little bit on that one. What were what were your thoughts on storyteller?
See, I don't know that I would call it storyteller. I mean, to me, every book, every movie has to be from somebody's point of view.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, it's like the way that I read it was, are you going to have a narrator or is it just going to play?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to have someone narrate what's going on or is it just going to play? I hardly highlighted anything in here because I think it was the same way. But yet at one point I wrote the word yes with an exclamation point. So, I mean, I don't know.
So what was the point you wrote yes for?
Point 7 under storyteller, do not end the storytelling frame at the end of the story, but about 3/4 of the way in.
That was another one of my mind blow. Like, oh my gosh, yes, of course. You want to leave something on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but I just, and for such and I'll probably have to go back, to be perfectly honest, I'll have to read the whole thing again because I'm going to be doing my books on this. I'm going to have to figure out this whole storyteller thing. But I don't have a narrator, which is the way that I see the storyteller is like the narrator. Mm-hmm. I don't have a narrator for mine. Mine just play.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I love the examples he gave were helpful to get.
Yes.
Yeah, super helpful. I mean, they're always helpful, but to explain how to use a storyteller, what he means by storyteller, and how storytellers were used in great stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes into genres very shortly, like literally 3 paragraphs. Yeah. And then the writing exercise.
Yeah. Did you take his genre section at the 20 books to 50K? Did you?
I was sitting right next to you.
Was that the first one? Okay. He did 3 and I couldn't.
He did 3. I took the first one, which was the genre one, where we're sitting in the front row and he says something. And I think you looked over at me and said, have you seen this one? And I was like, no. I think he saw that because he was like, for those of you who haven't seen this, don't watch.
Oh gosh. What is, oh gosh, it was Bruce Willis's movie, wasn't it?
No, because I've seen just about everything. It was Usual Suspects.
Oh, it was The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, it was Usual Suspects.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, it's been a few weeks since we came back from Vegas.
And who has a house to renovate and a class to take? I got time to watch movies.
Yeah. All right, let's move on, because so that this episode won't be 3 hours long. Let's go ahead and move on to chapter 9.
Chapter 9, Scene Wave.
Weave.
Oh, where all the things are actually, you know what?
Yes.
There's a lot of information here, but the cool thing is that even though it's a long chapter, there's not really a lot to discuss, because a lot of the chapter is him breaking down stuff.
I love Scene Weave so much. I just want to say, for those of you who struggled with scenes and how many scenes per book or movie or what, and what is a scene, what versus what is a beat. He says it so simply. It's one of those duh moments. And not that I mean, I get it. I know what a scene is in a movie. I've seen a movie. I read many books. So I know what a scene is, but I love his simplistic definition where he says a scene is generally one action in one time and place. That's it. That's what a scene is. Forget about all that other hook 'em smoking smoke and mirrors to get to what a scene is and beats and all that. It's one action in one time and place, and you can weave them together, hence Scene Weave, the title of this chapter. But right. I just that. And then he says Scene Weave is how you sequence these together. And then, oh my gosh, so much I highlighted in this chapter. These two are my favorite chapters. It's like, oh my gosh, revelation after revelation, mind blown. So.
And he says, what's important at this point in the process is to get an overall view of what you think the single main action of each scene will be. And then you take those things and you weave them together to make your story.
Yes. Yeah. And that's an exercise that you and I talked about revisions before during one of our accountability sessions. And that is one of the exercises that I was told to do, is take your scene and you have to make sure that every scene is doing something is happening in every scene. Well, duh, something is happening in every scene. Aha, but is something happening to further the character or the plot or blah, blah, blah. And I think, what was it the last episode we talked about, if you can or maybe it's earlier in this episode, which was 3 days ago. This is a long one. But if you can take a scene out of a book, like you said, you quoted
and the book doesn't change,
then then you should lose it. But I did learn, for those of you who are gasping in horror and clutching your verklempt at the thought of taking out scenes, because they're your babies and you're supposed to kill your darlings. Take them out, put them aside. Don't delete them, of course. Don't set them on fire. But I learned something great that authors can do with those scenes. They're called, just like in a movie, deleted scenes. You can use them for your newsletters, or for extra bonus content for your super fans. So that is a great way.
They could also be scenes in a different book.
Yeah.
Because if it's a really good scene, just because it doesn't fit this one, change a couple of character names. Maybe it fits in a different one.
Yeah.
I've heard of people saying they delete stuff. And I'm like, oh, why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? So anyway, yeah. I also like, one of his key points is to order the scenes by structure, not chronologically.
That was my next one. I was like, oh my gosh, that was another mind blower. Like, oh my gosh, right.
Yeah.
And by development of the character. So that was a great way to look at how to put the book, or how to put the scenes together.
He asked the question, how does the next scene comment on the previous scene? So like, how are they working and weaving together? I mean, this chapter is a short chapter because most of it is an example, but there's so much in this chapter.
There is. All right, let's see. So he gives examples from, I loved his, so this one is a stretch. From 1931, that movie. It's such a great movie, and it's difficult to watch, but when he describes that one scene, it makes perfect sense how they wove that together. With the
Which one?
M, it's on page 329.
Oh, yeah.
Of
Okay.
creating suspense. And yeah, when he talks about, it gives the examples of weaving the scenes together. That's one of the ones he uses as an example further on as well. And the other example that he uses is The Godfather. And I just love how he has this early draft of The Godfather, and you read the scenes and you're like, meh. And then you read the, the working
Final draft.
the final draft, and you're like, oh my God, that's why these scenes in this order had so much more impact. You can understand that now. And it's great to see that example of how order can change the impact of the story.
Yeah. Yep. And we talked about having multiple plots in your story. And he points out in here, which we discussed earlier, that you're not going to cover all 22 things for each plot when you have multiple plots, but they all must cover the 7, or you've missed something.
Yes.
And it says anything less than the 7 steps mean that line isn't a complete story, and the audience will find it unnecessary and annoying.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want to annoy your reader.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he breaks down ER. One of the, I had a word.
Medical TV shows?
Yes, the medical TV show, but no, he breaks down one of the episodes. I was like, what is the word I'm looking for? He breaks down one of the episodes that has 5 plots, and he shows you how they all work together. And then he does his writing exercise. And he breaks it down. The writing exercise is only this long. However, his example for the writing exercise is, let's count the pages. 14 pages for his first example for that writing exercise. I think this is great because he breaks down different types. He does crosscut scene weave, a love scene weave, crime scene weave. Like he shows you all the different types of genres that you would be using for scene weave. Like he shows you how they all work using his steps. This literally is the exercise pages because he gives you all the examples, and I love it.
Yes. So yeah, those 2 chapters, well, the whole book certainly worth its weight. Certainly worth, but did you have anything else for, because I could go on and on about scene weave.
Anything else for our 50-hour video?
I know, it's you're welcome.
And maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it just feels like it was that long. It may not be that long. I don't know. We'll find out when we get to the editing part.
That's right. So bye, everybody.
See you next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.
Please do.
Oh, I shouldn't do that face because Randy will use it as the thumb. I hope he's found his thumb.
Randy is mean.
He's going to see this.
It'll be worse, won't it? I've always liked you, Randy. You're my.
Uh-huh.
All right, bye.